Your second failure. Talking of
Oh
which,
my God.
so you established yourself as a sort of peerless news broadcaster, the first to not sit behind the desk. And you had this real growing reputation and you were on air during September the 11th.
Yeah.
And then you became a quiz show host.
Well,
And that's your second failure.
for for one series only, never to be repeated. Well, I went to ITV and I was sort of tempted across. I was working for what was at that point. I mean, their viewing figures right now are absolutely fantastic, but at that point was the smallest channel in British terrestrial television. Was Channel 5. It was ITN, very reputable news company that made the news for Channel 5. And I was, as the tabloid parlance goes, poached. I was asked to go and work for ITV. So that was a big step up, much bigger audiences. It was a step up. And so I went there, and then and that was where I anchored the 9/11 coverage, because I was live on air for many hours on it. It was a full opening story, and I was the newsreader who happened to be, rotated on. So I got the gig, and I sat there and did it. And I was there for a few months, and ITV, it was a contract. The contract was with ITV and not just ITN. And so they wanted to use me for other things. And they came at me with ideas. And I think, young-ish and certainly naive, and said, oh, yeah, if you want me to do, and it's a nonsense, of course, because what I've learned is, and actually for the podcast that I record, and I just recorded yesterday with Gloria Steinem, and she's, incredible. And one of her amazing bits of wisdom and advice is pursue the thing that you can uniquely do and let other people do the other stuff. I wish I'd known that.
Yes.
When they said to me, we've got a quiz show for you to do. And it was really good. It was somebody it was the brilliant producer, Paul Smith, who had made Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, and it was made by a great production company. So all these people knew what they were doing. I didn't know what I was doing. And I'm not for that. I don't belong there. It's not my natural sensibility. It's not a program I would watch. And it was not a program I was comfortable presenting. It was just ill-conceived. It was ill-conceived of them to ask me. It was ill-conceived of me to say yes. I think the quiz show was probably not the greatest. Well, I mean, it only lasted one season. But I think
the People Versus.
The People Versus. I hope you can't Google it.
You can. Oh, sorry.
Shit. Of course, you can Google anything, right? Yeah, I've never... I mean, even thinking about it makes me a little bit... and I worked with really nice people. But I was a square peg in a round hole. And I think it's important to know where your strengths lie and know where they don't lie. And there are people who are brilliant at that. And that's a definite skill, and it's a thing, and people are good at it. And millions of people watch stuff like that, and good for everyone, not good for me, not the natural fit. So yeah, the whole thing was a failure insofar as it wasn't commissioned. I was also pregnant and I had a lot of morning sickness when I was pregnant. So I didn't feel very well on set. And yeah, it was like the whole thing was an absolute write-off. It was a failure. Yeah.
Do you think that there is a power that comes from knowing when to quit?
Yes. Yes, I absolutely think there is. And I think it's really good to know the reasons that you're doing something and to know that they're your reasons. And I think, I think it's easy for a sort of discussion like this to end up sounding very privileged, because obviously people have to do the jobs they have to do to pay the gas bill. But I think, again, it's easy to be glib about these things and talk about kind of knowing your value and do it. But actually those things are important. They are important because they will guide you to, to the thing you are meant to be doing. They will guide you. And I don't believe that, you have to find your passion. I don't think that's true, actually. I think very few people find their passion. Do they? I don't know. I don't know if I've ever found but I've found something I could do, and I was reasonable at and got better at as I went along, and I got job satisfaction from, and that I felt a sense of validation from, and that I have frequently deeply enjoyed. I mean, is it my passion? I'm not sure it's my passion. And I think that's a very high bar for people. I think young people now, that idea of you've got to go and find your passion, it's a high bar. How about finding something you like? Maybe that would be enough. Find something you like and see if you can get paid for doing it and try and get better at it. I think those moderate goals are a much better idea.
Yes, I love that. It's sort of taking little steps
Yeah.
towards something
Yeah.
that might end
And
up
I'm not
bigger.
saying people aren't passionate. I mean, I've interviewed ballet dancers and painters and particle physicists who are passionate. That's great. But I think it's an enormous expectation to have of the entire population that we're all out there finding our passion. I don't think it's realistic.
This idea of quitting, can you apply it to an interview? Has an interview ever gone so awry that you've thought, okay, I need to change tack here or quit it entirely?
Well, I'm not a writer, but you know that thing that writers say, it's all copy. So I think if you're interviewing somebody and it's going very badly, well, that's the interview. And that's kind of, if you're involved in a car crash of an interview, stick with it. You know what? Because people will quite enjoy watching
Yes.
that. So I would say go with it. I mean, I've had interviews where I've thought people might walk out, or people, that's definitely been a thing. Not very often. I had, in fact, I was recording an interview for this new series that I'm doing, and I was interviewing Malcolm Gladwell, who I've interviewed before. I did him on Desert Island Discs. I have read, I think, probably all of his books. I regard him, obviously, as a writer, and he is a very, very good writer and a brilliant podcaster. And I did the introduction, which I thought was fulsome, and praised him as I thought he deserved. Asked him the first question, and he said, well, a better question might be. And yes, he did. And so I actually spent quite a lot of time afterwards thinking about that. And I thought, I don't think I was I was too emollient with him. I think I was too nice. I think I was the good girl. And that annoyed me about myself. And it annoyed me that on mic I didn't say to him, oh, we're going there. Well, a better title for your book might have been, it was like, okay,
Yes.
oh, we're having that conversation. Or I'll tell you what, when you're interviewing me, you can come up with the questions. But as long as I'm interviewing you, this is my job. I should have said that. I didn't say that. I was too polite. I was too nice. Sorry, what was the question? I've lost the part of the question.
No, I was just so fascinated that I've forgotten the question. Oh, if an interview goes awry,
yeah,
what do you
so
do?
that went awry. And I think I played too nice.
This is something that I always hate about myself. I think that about how I interview sometimes. And I listen back. It's a very equivalent experience. Okay? In the first ever season of How to Fail, when I didn't really know what I was doing and podcasts were still in their infancy, and I interviewed the author Sebastian Folkes, who
I've interviewed
I
him.
like immensely, admire.
Writer.
Yes, brilliant writer, friend, everything. And I did an introduction and I described his trilogy of war novels as a saga. And he said, when I finished the introduction, which again, it was very flattering and praiseworthy and everything, he said, well, it's not really a saga. A saga is an Icelandic series of stories passed down through the... And I thought, I felt terrible. That was my response, was like, oh gosh, he's like, do you want to retake that introduction again and rephrase it? And at least I did have the presence of mind to say, no, I think it's fine. I'll just leave it there. But it's a horrible thing to happen.
Well, can we just take a moment for both of us to observe that both of those things happened with men?
Right. White.
So
man.
That's what, well, Malcolm Gladwell, actually, his mother was Jamaican, but I felt, and I think the thing that bugged me after it was the sense in which I allowed him to get away with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'd be interested to know, he might have, and I'm sure if he was sitting here, if he was the third person in this triangle, he'd say, of course I would have said that to a man. But I felt there was a dynamic at play there that I thought we'd all put to bed.
Yes.
And I think that was the thing that bugged me about it. And I think that was the thing, what I was bugged about was my reaction to it. It wasn't surprised that somebody had tried to Bigfoot me at the start of an interview in a rather sort of unseemly way. But it was that I didn't look him in the eye and say, are we at home to Mr. Misogyny today? Welcome in.
Yes.
You know, that I didn't kind of
Yes.
address it for what I felt it was. And then he could have said, well, I would have said that to him, and we could have had the discussion. Yeah, I think it's difficult. And I think it's difficult. I find myself, and certainly over all the years that I did Desert Island Discs, and I hope now still, my husband will say to me, you are never braver than when you've got a microphone in front of you. And, I will ask questions that I wouldn't, and I would think, I can't believe I had the nerve to ask that. I can't believe. There's something about that, because it is my professional duty, because I'm trying to get to the good place for the listener, things that I wouldn't say or if I was sitting around a dinner table with somebody or whatever. But sometimes I'm still the good girl. Yeah, I wish I hadn't been when that happened. So that's a very long answer to the things going awry. It's all copy, because it will be good for the listener. The listener will enjoy, they might enjoy your discomfort. They'll certainly enjoy watching an interviewee behave badly, and it's all copy.
That's such a great piece of advice and such a release.
Yeah, I think it is. It's like, because I remember there was a point at which I started, so somebody like John McEnroe or Morrissey, both of whom came into the studio for Desert Island Discs, and Morrissey, I was amazed that he even turned up, because he'd already cancelled once. And I kept thinking, every question I asked him, I kept thinking he's going to get up and walk out. He just had that, kind of sort of rusty knife edge air about him where anything could have happened. And I thought, well, if he does, will we run it? I don't know, we could probably run that. And I remember deciding, because John McEnroe came into the studio, who I really, obviously revere as a tennis player, but revere as a broadcaster too. I think he knocks that out the park. So I was really excited about interviewing him, and he came in, he'd had a really terrible time, a terrible day, he'd had a terrible time in immigration, he'd had a rotten journey to the studio, he'd come straight off a flight, he was having a bad day. We're all allowed those. But he was certainly extremely unfriendly before the microphone went on. And I was sitting there, and I had done the job long enough by that point where I thought, oh, okay, let's go down the ski slope and see where this black run takes us. I kind of was sort of, and then the light went on and he was charm itself. And there was a little bit of me that thought, might have been a better interview if he'd been as he was before the green light went on. So yes, I think that it's a sort of freeing thing, because it's all an encounter. And also, when you're interviewing somebody, you meet them on the day that you meet them. And in that particular day, who knows? They could have just had a fight with their boyfriend. They could have lost the bid on the property they were after. The sole could have come off the bottom of their shoe and their foot sweat. Anything could have happened. So you meet them in that moment. And actually that's a great alchemy for an interview.
Thank you for watching. Make sure to check out the full episode of How to Fail on your preferred podcast platform, and also be sure to follow us on social media for the latest updates.